Welcome everybody. This is Neil Isaacs for the CVBBA. This is the September webinar. We've got some folks rolling in. We were discussing, this is our first Zoom webinar. For those of you who have joined us before, we've always been on GoToMeeting. We made the leap this month for both our board meetings as well as these public webinars to Zoom. So thank you for bearing with us as we work through the technical hitches. We're actually going to try out some polling today, which should be really fun as well. So as people start to roll in, I will jump into our program. I have an agenda here. You have been welcomed. We're going to do a quick CVBBA update, followed by our presentation with the Adam Ray, who you see on your screen today. Then Adam and I are going to have a quick discussion about disintermediation. If you're wondering what disintermediation is, we'll get to that. Then be sure to add your questions to the chat because we will be doing some Q&A about Adam's presentation and anything else that you want. And if we do have time at the end, we'll stop recording. We'll move to an open forum. If we have time, we like to do that at the end. So before we get to the update, I like to recognize a few key sponsors: Live Oak Bank, Deal Studios, Wells Fargo, Diamond Financial, Aquesta Bank, and Pinnacle Bank. We do have more sponsors, but these are some of the sponsors that when we were going to do a conference, raised their hand immediately and said, I'm on board. We value all of our sponsors. And so we'll get to some more of those in a minute. All righty. Next up, just a little bit about the CVBBA, and I think this would be an excellent opportunity for those of you who have joined us early for me to try and do a poll. I'm sharing a screen. Let's see how I could do a poll. I don't see my poll options. It's probably hidden somewhere. Well, maybe we won't do a poll. I lost my control panel where the polls are. Let's do this. I'm going to bring this down. Where's my Zoom control panel? I'm lost, Adam.
I am not a Zoom guy, so I'm not sure how much I can help you. But if you go down to the footer, right, if you scroll down to the footer, you'll see options pop up and you can see polls. And if I click on poll, I can see the poll that you created. So I can see question number 1, is this your first CVBBA function? And then I think you can cycle through that. So I don't know if attendees have already had a shot at
I think I need to activate that.
Got it.
Oh, I found it. I found it. Okay, hold on. It was
launch. I can launch polling. If you want to give me the
yeah,
authority,
yeah.
I can click this. All right, I'm just gonna go for it.
Yeah. Let's find out who has been, of those of you who are here, who is it is this is your first meeting. I think we've already got some results coming back in. Thank you for your participation there. Looks like we've got a majority of new folks here. Thank you for the assist there, Adam. Together, we're going to get through this experimentation. Yeah, when I go to full screen, I lose. When I go to full screen, I lose my control panel. So, while Adam stepped away, welcome back. About the CVBBA. So we've established a lot. There's a lot of first-time folks here. We are a nonprofit corporation created to unite those engaged in the sale of business opportunities in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. The CVBBA is an affiliate of the IBBA. So there are BBAs across the country, and we're excited to represent intermediaries in this corner of our nation. Learn more about the CVBBA at cvbba.com. New website is in the works, so check it out now and check it out again soon. I always like to feature one benefit of our group, and this month I just want to shed some light on our LinkedIn group. Last month we talked about the IBBA has a Facebook group. This time I'm talking about the CVBBA's LinkedIn group. So if you're on LinkedIn, and we're going to talk a lot about LinkedIn today, I think, go to the Carolinas-Virginia's Business Broker Association. And that's a group where intermediaries can chat in a professional environment. Please make note of more sponsors on the bottom of my screen today. And let's move forward. I have a quick update that I want to, oh, I didn't share these results. I can share results, and I think all of you can now see that 56% of those who voted, this is your first time here today. Glad you could join us, and for those of you returning, we're glad you're here as well. My update is going to be brief today. We had our board meeting just yesterday, and I'm happy to report that as you can see, we're now Zooming. This is something that we talked about. It was a member request. We're going to stay on Zoom. We now have over 100 members, including our sponsors, and that's been a goal of ours for some time. So we're excited that we're a growing association. As a reminder, we have board nominations are live now. We have 5 board candidates, and we're accepting 3 of those by vote. You can vote through email. Check your inbox for those to vote. You should have received that email. If you didn't, you can email me, and I'll make sure that you get that. Those are closing Friday, and we're going to announce probably next month who the next class of board members are. And then we had a lot of discussion about what our benefits are. I mentioned we're moving to Zoom. We were just having this conversation of how can we give back value? What's the best thing for our membership? And we're trying to make improvements there as well. As you may know, we added a new E&O insurance partner this year, and we're continuing to look for new partners. If you have a benefit that you think that we should add, please let us know. It's all about, we're listening to our masses. So that's my update for September. And now I'm going to pivot. We're going to switch into the next part of the program. I want to invite you to chat. If you have any commentary, please do chat. I've got Q&A. I'm looking at all my different windows here. But I'm encouraging you to put your questions in the chat. And we do have a Q&A feature. You can use that as well. Adam, I do have more polling questions. I'm glad that you could trigger those. I think that I can as well. If you would like to trigger the next one, just let me know, or you can do that.
I'll give it a shot.
Okay. As questions come in, I'll be watching the chat, and I'll interject, Adam, if we have relevant questions that can't wait, and then we'll also do questions at the end. All righty then. Well, Adam, I'm going to read your, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to read I'm going to properly introduce you, and then I'm going to invite you to share your slides, and we'll get into the first part of our presentation, which is your presentation.
Okay.
All righty then. Let me stop sharing. All right. Let me tell you a little bit about our presenter today. So Adam Ray, I'd like to call Adam a friend. I've met Adam at an IBBA function years ago, and we've kept in touch, and we've always had meaningful conversations. He's the founder of the online business sale platform BizNexus and its M&A focused digital agency offshoot, BN Digital. He leads the agency's solutions for online reputation management, social selling, inbound lead generation for business intermediaries, and more. He's an experienced entrepreneur, investor, and advisor, and he's worked across multiple engagements for small businesses, B2B service professionals, and buyout groups, accelerating lead generation and deal flow through digital sales and marketing. So BN Digital focuses exclusively on business intermediaries and related professionals within the industry. And so Adam has some unique insights into our industry. I speak of ours serving intermediaries. His platform also has places to serve buyers and sellers of businesses. But I would venture to say he's got his finger on the pulse of doing deals and using technology. So those are some of the topics that we're going to cover today. All righty then. So Adam, can you share your screen?
Yes, I can. Let me go ahead and do that. Thank you for that intro, Neil. I think you dug that up from the archives. I think that may have been my first IBBA bio that I wrote once upon a time. And happy to recap any of that or bring it up to speed. Basically, we focus on deal origination. You can think of BizNexus as, our public market deal origination, so listed deals, and then BN Digital is our agency focused exclusively on proprietary deal origination, off-market deal origination, which is what the majority of business brokers out there are certainly interested in when it comes to the sell side. So Neil, thank you for having me here today in the CVBBA. It was a great opportunity. Love to partnership with all the BBAs across the country with these chats. I think for me, if I see some familiar faces on the attendee list from our lunch and learn, from our weekly lunch and learn. If you know me, if you've been in some of these presentations, I like to try to get to Q&A as quickly as possible. I think that's where most of the value will come. So I'm going to plan just to walk through 20 minutes if that works at this point, Neil. What do you think?
That works. And I'm going to actually turn off my camera, and it should be just you. And I think Stacy's joined us as well. She's our executive operations manager. So we'll give you the full screen, and then we'll come back, and when you're done, and we'll have some more conversation.
Great. Okay. So in my screen, we're shared. We're looking good.
I can see your screen. You are good to go, my friend.
Perfect. All right. So I'll chat for 20 minutes, basically kind of a state of the union on what has happened over the past 6 months, what we've seen with our platform, what we've seen with our agency, some of the moves that we've made to adjust for deal origination in this new environment that we're in, and where some of this, we think where that is going, what may revert to the old normal, and what might be here to stay. Let's see. So the agenda for this 20 minutes before the Q&A, I'll recap just the major shifts that we saw take place, and how that affected the different players on our platform, but in this industry, really, the different technologies that we've seen adopted. Obviously, Zoom is one of those, how these technologies have been being used. And then the deal origination process, the changes that we've seen, a lot of which were already happening. They just accelerated dramatically once COVID hit. Mid-March, obviously, everybody was frozen. Everything kind of seized up, and we were all in this environment where the Zoom webinar started flooding our inboxes, and everybody was listening, looking for guidance, and everyone had an answer, but no one really knew what was going on. And then this summer, really early summer, I think really July for us, we started to see a really big uptick in activity. And speaking with some of the CEOs of the larger franchises recently, they've all seen the same thing. We're really coming off some record months with activity. And that's been interesting to see how quickly that happened, just going from 0 to 100 really overnight this summer. The first thing that we saw when COVID hit, with the major players on our platform, I'll just walk through them. Private equity was the first to kind of pull back mid-March. Everybody who I was speaking with, who'd been engaged with BizNexus, but then also our deal origination agency, they just hit pause on proprietary deal origination. A lot of that, I think, was just because sellers, if they had good deals, especially in the lower middle market, they were just going to hold off. No one was really doing anything. And then also just the traditional methods of deal sourcing for these private equity shops completely changed. No more conferences, no more top of the funnel in-person meetings. They really took a pause. And so I think what we really saw to be a general theme, private equity refocusing on existing portfolio companies, maybe bolt-on acquisitions for existing portfolio companies, but no primary acquisitions. And for this audience, the big positive was and continues to be a new focus on utilizing intermediaries, utilizing business brokers for deal flow. And a lot of the deal sourcers who we've been speaking with at the boutique buyouts, They love using intermediaries because it's just a built-in level of diligence. And the intermediaries are really the ones who are on the front lines, living commission to commission, who have to make proprietary deal origination work. So if the intermediaries can do that in this environment, it's kind of a risk hedge for private equity. So we've seen a lot of interest with fundless sponsors, with funded sponsors, with private equity groups, with buyout groups, in intermediaries and leveraging intermediaries for deal flow. So that's something that we've seen continue to grow since this summer. We don't see that slowing down. I talk about this being a great setup for normalizing cash flow for a business broker here in the comments. We can get into that after I cover strategics. Strategic acquirers, companies looking to grow through acquisition, buy smaller opportunities. They were the first ones to get active on our platform. They got active very quickly. So I think if you're a well-capitalized company in this environment, you're out there, you're bargain hunting over the next 12 to 18 months. We saw that very quickly. And I think this is really the beginning of a permanent shift, in my opinion. I see strategic acquirers only becoming more active in this industry as we move forward. There's going to be that gap between the haves and have-nots, and the companies that are well-capitalized are on the hunt for acquisitions. For me, with our agency, we've placed a number of clients with strategic acquirer relationships. So as a business broker, if you're looking to maybe normalize some of your cash flow over the next 12 to 18 months, if you can get a retainer set up with a well-capitalized company or with a buyout group, and get a retainer plus success fee type arrangement, I think that's a great risk hedge moving into this new year, whatever happens in 2021. But between strategic acquirers and private equity, they're looking, right? They want to find good intermediaries who can help them with deal flow and bring that through. So that's a big trend that we've seen. Individual buyers, sellers, with us, with our platform being what it is, we've seen a lot of interest from the first-time buyers, from people who are either unsure of their current situation, or they've already been displaced, or maybe they've just been sitting around with family for a long time and they're looking at new life priorities and they're thinking about different ways to get into entrepreneurship and they're interested. So we've had record signups on the platform, excuse me, month over month, with a lot of these one-time buyers, first-time buyers. And that's been a shift for us because the majority of buyer traction on our platform to date has really been people who are familiar with acquisition, who are actively looking, who are in an organized group, or have an organized search for one business to buy. Sellers, right off the bat, like everybody, we saw a lot of people in trouble. We've seen a big uptick in Article 9 deals, distressed deals. We don't see that slowing down. And we've still seen a lot of the high value quality deals kind of hitting pause on the selling process. Be interested to hear other people's feedback if they want to chime in and chat, or if we can get into that in the Q&A. But we think that we are positioned this year and next year for a really big wave of buyer activity, assuming access to capital remains. There's a lot of interest in entrepreneurship, in controlling your own destiny. And obviously, we're going to have a lot of people displaced in this environment. So one other thing I'll just throw in there, hopefully it's not off track. We've definitely seen huge interest in the deals that can show post-COVID growth at this point. So if there's data to back up a company not only not slowing down post-COVID, but accelerating, there's a lot of buyer interest there. So maybe as a business broker, if you can somehow place renewed focus on data collection, if you have a company that is going to be coming to market and you can track those metrics that are going to look good post-COVID, buyers are definitely looking for that. We've seen a lot of that. We've seen a lot of interest there. So that's the state of the union. I'll take the next, let's say, 15 minutes to walk through the marketing, right? What we've seen with deal origination. Some of this may be review for some of you, some of it may be new. It's kind of a lot to cover in a short amount of time. Another reason why I typically want to get right into Q&A. But
hey, Adam, how about a poll on digital marketing funnel awareness? Is now a good time for that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a
I'm
great
going to
time.
launch this poll now. Attendees, if you want to vote, do you know what a digital marketing funnel is? And it looks like the results are coming in, and we got a majority of folks who are aware of what a digital marketing funnel is, but we've also got a few people out there who haven't heard of that yet.
Yeah, so it looks like 75-25.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So then let me just briefly cover what a funnel is. Basically, in its most basic form, a funnel is different stages of the conversation. So at the top of the funnel, it's me meeting Neil at the IBBA for the first time saying, hey, this is me. I'm Adam. This is what I do. He doesn't know me from some schmo off the street. Then as we move further down the funnel, we have conversations. Maybe Neil and I are shooting some emails back and forth. We're talking about BizNexus. We're talking about the CVBBA. We're learning about what the other does. Neil's checking me out. He hears from some people that I'm okay at what I do, vice versa. There's some social proof there. We're becoming familiar with each other, with our brands, with our offerings. We're moving down the funnel. The conversation is changing. And then we get to the bottom of the funnel where you have commitment, right? So Neil has enough faith in me. He knows enough about me to say, hey, Adam, come and present to the CVBBA. I feel comfortable with who you are. I feel comfortable with your value prop. I've seen the social proof. I'm going to take a bet, and I'm somewhat confident that I'm not going to get burned. That's a very basic example of a funnel, right? So with your marketing efforts, you want to make sure that your communications are appropriate for each stage of that conversation, for each step of the funnel. And with deal origination, what we've seen, I'm not here to pitch my agency, but I am going to talk about my process because we constantly try to iterate and see what works. And that's changing really on a monthly basis, especially in this environment. And what we've seen working right now, cold email, LinkedIn, very good for top of the funnel if your targeting is right. So going right after your primary prospects, your referral prospects. So primary prospects being business owners, right? If the majority of people in this presentation are, let's say, geographic focused business brokers, who are the business owners in your territory, who have been running companies for a certain amount of time, 10 years, companies have a certain head count, et cetera, getting laser focused on who that target is. And then the referral prospects who can deliver that primary prospect on an ongoing basis, the financial advisors, the accountants, the lawyers, the divorce lawyers, right? The people who represent ongoing deal flow over the long term for your brokerage as you grow it. Cold email, LinkedIn have been great for that. Drop notes as well. They're always going to be effective, but I'll get into the concept of integrated outreach. What I've never liked about drop notes is the lack of data, right? You can spend a lot of money and blast out the drop notes, and you don't know if an admin put it in the trash or if the business owner read it, liked it, put it in their desk, and may revisit it 2 years from now. Middle of the funnel, once you've gotten these people ideally into your online Rolodex, into your LinkedIn network, Neil, we can go there. I know you want to talk about that. Then you want to have that middle of the funnel conversation, right? You want to be social. You want to be posting on LinkedIn on a regular basis in a manner that helps establish you as a qualified authority in your niche, right? As a qualified authority in business and acquisition and sale in Virginia, right? Wherever. Ideally, you're rolling over all these prospects into an ongoing newsletter, where the newsletter will always be about business acquisition and sale. It will show what you're doing as an authority in this world of business acquisition and sales, not just you telling. It just very clearly shows examples and stories and videos of who you are, what you're doing as a professional. And then down at the bottom of the funnel, you have conversion, commitment, right? Where the traditional, lob a phone call in if that's ready, get on a Zoom in this environment, direct email, newsletter, always a call to action to, let's chat, let's have a confidential discussion about your exit path, what that might look like. Let's call me for a free discussion about a business valuation, et cetera, et cetera. But you always want to have that opportunity for the prospect to convert. So in a nutshell, that's the marketing funnel, and making sure that you have that in place and coordinated at each step of the funnel is really important, especially in this environment. And I'll get into why. COVID has really transformed a lot of the deal process, in my opinion, permanently. Some of this is never coming back. The outreach, we can talk more about that, and I'm sure there'll be some questions in Q&A. Zoom, Neil, you just switched over to Zoom. Everyone's switching over to Zoom. This has become accepted when it comes to top of the funnel first meetings. I'd argue that for the most part in Main Street and certainly in lower middle market M&A, this was not the case. You wanted to break bread right off the bat and do that initial vetting. When you're talking about auditioning for a contract that will give you 10% of what somebody's built over the past 30 years, this is something that has been a big change. The fact that you can actually get these engagements or come very close to getting these engagements, really doing the whole education and familiarity process online and then having the in-person meeting. This has been a really big shift, and I personally don't see a lot of that going back regardless of what happens with COVID and a vaccine.
Hey, Adam, we've actually got a poll on COVID's effects. You want me to launch that now?
Absolutely.
Let's little engagement here. Brokers, have you made a deliberate change in your marketing strategy since the outbreak of COVID? I think I know where this one's going to go.
It's going back and forth.
Yeah, it's all over the map. Similar to the last question, we're looking 75% have been affected, and the remainder are saying no.
Interesting. All right, so let's just say like 75-25 again, kind of 75 yes. Yeah, makes sense. Everybody was shifting their marketing budget when COVID happened. I mean, there was a pullback, and for, again, those of you who've been in any of my webinars, we had this really great opportunity for awareness marketing, not conversion marketing, but being helpful, getting your brand out there. Everybody was listening. It's still the case, but not like what it was, back in March and when this all started to happen. Now we're seeing a lot of conversion. Right now it's a good time. But marketing stacks have definitely changed. Marketing budgets have been reallocated. And what we've seen with Zoom, you see, for the people who are doing this well, all of a sudden you've got more coverage for more meetings, right? If you're really automating the top of your funnel, you're finding out you can do a whole lot more with some of these tools that are, have been available, but now have been widely adopted, widely accepted. The need for a very personal relationship, that's been lessened, right? And depending on the business, you might just have contracts coming through with the businesses that are in a position where they need to get sold. There's less in-person vetting taking place, and that's obvious as to why. CRMs, I've always been a big proponent of using a CRM with my team. I'm always drilling it in. You record everything. I remember I started out my career in a sales capacity with an investment manager who would always say, if somebody sneezes in the background, you put that note into the CRM. And back then it was ACT. You write down the note so that you can engage on a personal level, which seems kind of sleazy, but it's just really keeping everything in one place in terms of all of your interactions so that you can get right back into the conversation that you were having 3 months ago, 6 months ago. If you're using a CRM, if your team is using a CRM, you don't miss a beat, right? You keep that conversation going, you keep that personal interaction, you keep that relationship warm. And the importance of that is, I don't see how you can really do well in this environment without using a CRM on an ongoing basis religiously. I think that's really going to separate the pack moving forward in this environment with brokers who do this and do not just from a sales standpoint, but from a marketing standpoint as well. Diligence, we've seen a lot less diligence. It's probably more relevant to lower middle market type deals, but we've seen a lot of comfort with online diligence that wasn't there before, right? I don't think that's ever coming back. I mean, if you can streamline the diligence process and do that effectively, larger companies have been forced into this, and now that it's working, I don't see that coming back. Changes in deal origination. We really just kind of went through this. Since we're running somewhat low on time, let me just dig into the importance, this last line here, the importance of multi-channel integrated campaigns in this environment. And apologies for anybody who was on my Lunch and Learn last week. We're going to cover some of the stuff that I walked through. But there's this concept in marketing. If 75% of the people on this call today are already familiar with a marketing funnel, I'm just going to say at least half of you are familiar with the rule of 7. The rule of 7 is a basic marketing principle where, in terms of business brokerage, your seller prospect should be touched by your marketing message at least 7 times before they engage you, right? This is a high value transaction. Again, you're talking about getting 10% of what they build over X amount of time. It's very competitive. It's very noisy. So ideally, in a coordinated fashion, you're touching each prospect across multiple channels, multiple times. So they will, just to go back to the original analogy of the funnel, so that when Neil is reaching out for me to present at the CVBBA, he already knows who I am. He has seen my social proof. He knows that people have done business with me and they've enjoyed doing business with me. There's lower risk in his mind. This is the rule of 7, and this is what needs to be integrated into any marketing campaign that you're doing in this environment, right? So that you're warming your prospects through the top to the mid of the funnel in an automated fashion, right? And you're doing it at scale. That's what's going to win in this environment. The breaking bread, the phone call, ideally that's happening when your prospect has already been vetted to some degree, right? They've already been qualified and they're already familiar with who you are. It's a more productive conversation. It's a more productive meeting, and it's going to eliminate wasted time. It's going to reduce wasted time for a business broker who prior to COVID was doing it the other way, right? So one example that I gave in my Lunch and Learn this past week, which this is coming in real time, right? This is what we're seeing with especially Main Street business brokers, but we see this all the time. We're doing, our presentations based on a lot of the mistakes that we see and trying to correct those on an ongoing basis. And one mistake that I have been seeing continuously is this disjointed marketing, right? So since midsummer, we've had the uptick in activity, and you've had a lot of business brokers trying to get back in the marketing game. They want to spend money, and that's great because that means transactions are happening. But again, especially in this environment, you want to make sure that you're doing this in a coordinated fashion. So what we'll often see is you've got one vendor for drop notes, you've got one vendor for telemarketing, you've got one vendor for email, you've got, you're doing random acts of social posting because you you should, but you don't really have a larger cohesive strategy in place. That's not the way to do it if you're thinking about the rule of 7 and touching these prospects in a coordinated fashion. Again, we're in an environment of reduced in-person interactions, and you have to take that into account with your marketing, right? You have to think about, I don't have the opportunity to win this person over like I did pre-COVID. So how can I do this in a strategic fashion across multiple channels with my marketing stack, right? So across LinkedIn, across email, across your newsletter, across phone, at each level of the funnel. Your deal funnel is not working in this environment if you aren't thinking about this. Whether you're doing it with somebody, whether you're doing it on your own, you need to be thinking about tying this all together. Otherwise, you're just burning money and you're burning time. So let me see let me walk through here one thing that we've been seeing, right? So one process that we've seen that's common: a business broker will send out a drop note, maybe follow that up with some telemarketing. They're doing some email on the side. They're posting on social, but it's sporadic. If they're busy, they'll miss it for a couple of weeks. And it's not posting that necessarily helps define them as a qualified authority in their area. And it's not targeted to a very specific audience, right? For anybody who watched my LinkedIn presentation with the IBBA, I think I tried to drill home. LinkedIn is a targeted billboard. You should be filling that full of your, and this gets into the disintermediation issue, Neil, but you should be filling that full of your regional business owners who are tier 1 prospects, financial advisors, accountants, lawyers. Fill that up. You can have up to 30,000 people in your LinkedIn Rolodex. Ideally, if you're posting, it's just free advertising, getting right in front of them to nurture them, to reinforce who you are, what you do, what you're doing on an ongoing basis, right? So you're not spending the money on the advertising, you're doing that for free. taking that type of process, and just to show you some of what we've been doing with our agency that we really like to focus on, integrating this, right? So maybe you send a drop note, but ideally you can follow that drop note with an email, right? And you can introduce yourself with a direct email, who you are, what you do. You monitor who's opened it. You resend it with a different title to people who have not opened it. And then you can put them into some sort of LinkedIn campaign. You can bring them into your LinkedIn network, right? So you can get them into your social funnel, bring them into your LinkedIn network, tell them who you are, and then they're exposed to your ongoing posting that helps define you as a qualified authority in your space, right? And then ideally, if you're doing it the right way, you can see who's opened the email, you can see who's accepted your LinkedIn invitation, and then you can follow up with some telemarketing and touch the people who haven't engaged with anything. All of these people, in my mind, should be rolled over into your newsletter, just for ongoing communication and nurturing off of the LinkedIn channel, right? And a channel that's much better for conversion. In a nutshell, how do you guys do this? Just make sure that you have clean data, right? We can talk about that. But if you start with, I see a lot of business brokers buying a list and then just getting different vendors on a list and doing different things. If you have a list and you're making sure that it's enriched, that you have not only their physical address, but you have their email, you have all of their social, you have their phone, then you can run an integrated campaign like this, whether it's just you or your team, or you're doing it with somebody. It all starts with data. So enriching the data, verifying the data, making sure it's clean data. If you have that, then you can tie all of these really effective outreach methods together. I think that's really, really important in this environment of reduced social interaction, reduced opportunity to engage your prospect. And I don't see that going anywhere this year, next. I think it's only becoming more important. And again, I do see the people who are doing this as much more likely to separate themselves from the pack going forward. So again, how do you keep track of all of it? Just get a CRM. It doesn't matter who you're with. Just make sure you're using it. Like, a lot of people will have overwhelming CRMs because they fall in love with all the features and all the coulds. We could do this, we could do that. The biggest thing with the CRM is to make sure that you're using it. That's it. The biggest failure point for CRM is lack of adoption. So if you can get something that you like, that gets the job done, that you're sticking with, don't break it. I threw this quote in this morning. Growing up, my mother always used to drill this into me. She'd say the primacy of secondary consideration. It's like, do you know what that means? Like, yes, mom, I know what that means. It's just putting a primary focus on the secondary things that people wouldn't ordinarily think about. So to kind of go back to the guy who taught me how to use a CRM in my first sales role, if somebody's sneezing in the background, you follow up and you know, and you can ask, hey, how are things going to get through that cold? Again, is that sleazy, or is that just really, really attentive? Is that systematizing the process of client focus, of client interaction? If you can do that, you can really stand out from 99% of the calls any of these clients are getting on a daily basis. But you can also deliver better service. You can do better by your client. And a CRM is critical in any environment, but in this environment, it certainly is, to help get that done. So that's pretty much it. I think we're right at the time, Neil. So I'll just shut up.
No, you're doing great. We got a couple more poll questions, polls to run through, and I did get some questions coming in from your comments. So let's start with a poll question, because you were touching on reaching different contacts. I'm going to throw a poll up now. This is, what is your favorite channel for reaching buyers? You've got a bunch of options here. Go ahead and select what your favorite channel for reaching buyers is. While that's running, I'm going to look at some of the questions that we got, and these are great to kind of transfer us over. So over our program, I wanted to hear from Adam and hear your approach and what you think is important in the COVID era. I also want to have this conversation about disintermediation. And then now that we got these questions coming in, we'll kind of tie all this stuff together. So let's get to some of the questions from your webinar, from your presentation first. One of the questions I got, there's different types. You mentioned funnels. Are different types of these outreach channels perhaps better for different types of buyers? You mentioned tier one, and then there's buyers and sellers and advisors. Adam, could you speak a little bit to selecting the right outreach based on the type of person you're trying to reach?
Yeah, I mean, that varies, right? It's all about finding the pools where your prospects are fishing in. I mean, we don't just look at it by channel, but we look at it by, by groups, by pools. So you're talking about your CVBBA LinkedIn group. That's, that, for example, if I'm going to go market to business brokers, that would be a pool that I would fish in. But I'm guessing that if you have a CVBBA Facebook group right now, you're probably getting a lot more engagement. So, being able to identify which channels are good for what, Facebook groups are typically much more engaged than LinkedIn groups at this point. And then for different prospects, one comment I get from, it's legitimate, but with LinkedIn, are my boomer prospects on LinkedIn, right? And are they there? Maybe not. The majority of people who are LinkedIn are over 40. The majority of CEOs are on there. With LinkedIn specifically, I look at that as the tip of the spear, right? So if you can go and get somebody into your network on LinkedIn, or you can make a first approach on LinkedIn, you can get all of their other data and, again, touch them across multiple channels. So whether they're on LinkedIn or whether they're on email, first of all, if you're doing LinkedIn the right way, when they log in, ideally they're going to see your post, they're going to see your content, regardless of when you posted it, just because of the shelf life of LinkedIn posts. But that's I digress with that. But just making sure that you do have this integrated approach, this multi-channel approach, that's the best way to hedge your bets. And if you're doing that the right way, then you're likely to touch the financial advisors, the accountants, the lawyers, the business owners of varying demographics at scale.
And you mentioned tier one. I personally, I do buyers, sellers, advisors. But can you expand a little bit more on how you categorize contacts for how we should look at these contacts and the different tiers they fit into?
Yeah, I think I was just using my own lingo for lead scoring. Everybody has their own process for lead scoring, whatever is important to you, right? So I call tier one prospects, for our clients, we call tier one prospects people who have not only engaged with content or accepted to be in your social networks, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, but they've also replied. They've clearly kind of raised their hand and said, hey, I'm interested in something you said. That's a tier one prospect. Maybe a tier two prospect is someone who fits the bill, but they haven't engaged with your content. They haven't engaged with the campaign that we've done. Maybe a tier three prospect is somebody who fits the bill, but just hasn't been brought into your ecosystem. So lead scoring, depending on what kind of volume you're doing as a business broker, and you can do this really well with a CRM if you have it set it up correctly, where ideally you're just spending your time on the tier one leads and not burning your time on these tier two, tier three leads. Lead scoring is really important once you get into scale, once you get into volume. And
so I like this idea of lead scoring. So let them kind of rise to the top based on their activity, their engagement with the content that you're putting out, based on how many listings they're inquiring about. And your CRM should kind of point to the ones that are worth spending time on.
Yeah, you can do it with listing inquiries depending on what you have. So like everyone has their own hub, where we have our own marketing hub. At the end of the day, all these things do the same thing, right? So go with who you want to go with, work with who you want to work with. Just make sure you're using it. If you're using it correctly, if it's set up correctly, you're doing it on a religious basis, right? It's not just listing inquiries. You can identify people across channels. So if somebody is engaging with your website, or if somebody is engaging with a form or a lead page, or any of your social content, ideally this person's automatically getting kicked up to a tier one lead. So if I see Neil, right, all of a sudden he becomes a tier one lead and I've got to check him out. When I click on Neil's profile, I want to see you've engaged with my past 2 LinkedIn posts. You've touched my website 3 times in the past 24 hours. anything that's relevant to arm me with what I need in a sales capacity to make the call, right? To know exactly where you are, to have that advantage. That's lead scoring, that's lead tracking when it's done correctly.
I like that. And I want to direct our audiences, we talked a lot about CRMs today. Our last presentation was on CRMs. I believe it was our last one or the one before. So if you want to learn more about CRMs, there's a bunch out there. And we've actually dedicated some time to that. And there's a lot of CRMs that are good out there. But I want to circle back to this idea of clean data. This is a question that came in during your presentation. How do you move people onto your list? You got people coming in from LinkedIn, from BizBuySell, emails, phone calls. And maybe this comes back to the CRM, but how do you get clean data?
I mean, if that was an easy answer, I wouldn't have an agency. Right? I mean, it's an ongoing process, and you want to make sure that everything's being tied together, right? So most CRMs will use email as kind of your source of truth, and it will link all the data from an email. But you get the data. Ideally, your CRM has partnerships with data enrichment platforms. HubSpot. We've used that for a long time. They have partnerships with companies like Full Contact, where if you put in an email and a name, all of a sudden the company and a lot of other stuff will get populated, right? So ideally you have on the back end stuff that's helping to populate that. But with certain outreach methods, emails certainly, especially if you're going to try to do it from your own domain, you want to run these emails through bounce checkers. You want to make sure that everything is verified before you enter anybody into a campaign. So there's a process for that, and whoever you're working with should be able to help with that if they're working with you in a digital marketing outreach capacity.
Well, it's all about the sellers. I'm going to launch our final poll here. Speaking about getting clean data, this is about seller outreach. So I'm going to launch this poll, and it should be on your screen, but I'll read it anyway. What is your favorite channel for reaching out to sellers? So we've got LinkedIn's coming in strong. There's numerous ways out there, but I think these are the top hits, and it looks like it's coming in pretty evenly spread here. And if there is another channel that we don't have on this poll, I encourage you to put that in the chat or raise your hand, and we can listen if there's a specific channel that we missed in that poll. Pretty evenly spread though.
Yeah.
Interestingly,
right.
The business sale platforms got zero votes, which is interesting, because we're gonna start to pivot to that here in a minute with our next topic. But before we get to that, I think we had another question that came in. Disjointed marketing. Somebody asked if you could elaborate a little bit more on that. Is this about branding? Is this about timing of your messaging? Is it about being consistent? How do you coordinate your marketing so it's not disjointed? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I mean, the short answer is just being thoughtful about your funnel, right? Mapping it out. So if you break it down into 3 stages, where it's a curiosity, where again, you don't know me from some schmo off the street, down to the middle of the funnel, kind of enlightenment and engagement, down to the bottom where it's commitment, right? I want to talk to you about a conversation about a business valuation. What type of messaging are you sending at each stage? Then across channel, you're not hitting people with the same message on email, on LinkedIn, you're not spamming these prospects. The biggest thing with business brokerage, in my mind, is to make sure that you're not ruling yourself out of a commission, that there aren't any major red flags, and overlapping messaging, spamming people across channels, not tracking whether they've opened an email or not, so that you can follow that up with a LinkedIn message. That's the fastest way to rule yourself out of a commission. We're in an industry where at best 90% of the people who you're reaching out to will not be ready for what you're offering at the exact moment that you're sending out the message, no matter how good your marketing is. You don't want to burn that 90%, right? You want to make sure that you're bringing them into a nurturing campaign. You're educating them about what you do, so that if they're ready for the talk about a business valuation 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, you haven't ruled yourself out.
And it kind of comes back to that that lead scoring? How many times have you touched them? How many times have they engaged with your message outreach?
Yeah, and just tracking in general, whatever you can track so that you're not making that mistake. The better you get at that, the better your brokerage is going to be over the short term and long term, definitely.
Comes back to CRMs and data and
yeah.
Well, good. Well, I encourage those of you listening today, and it looks like Emily says that text is a way that she reaches out to sellers, which we just had a conversation about that the other day. Text is getting more and more prevalent. It's Emily, I'm not sure if you're a millennial, but we're definitely seeing communications go towards text communications.
I would love to. I mean, that could be a separate webinar on its own. In my mind, like for me personally, and this comes down to personal opinion, I rule people out when they're cold texting me. I hate it. And the conversions are great in terms of opens, and everyone focuses on those metrics, but just the gut feel of somebody texting me out of the blue, it's invasive in my personal opinion.
Well, that's interesting. And I think it's hard to automate as well. That's one of the challenges with text is emails your data's there. It's easy to harvest and scrape. But with a phone call, with a text, with LinkedIn, in fact, Adam has a question, Adam Petrikoff. You probably read that, Adam, but I'll read it. How do you market via LinkedIn without using automated programs, which seem to get poor results and they tend to look like spam?
You keep it simple, right? I mean, you create lists. If you're on Sales Navigator, you create lists for your primary prospects, your referral prospects. You're inviting them with a message that's personalized. You put in the work, right? I mean, you have to spend the time. LinkedIn is not a scale platform, and it can be over time, but it's really a quality platform. Again, I look at LinkedIn as the tip of that spear. So if you want to get really accurate with your targeting on who your primary prospect is, on who your referral prospect is, you get them into that LinkedIn ecosystem, and then you can roll them over into some other automated channels, right? If they're rolled over into your newsletter, that kind of thing, people are more open to receiving a newsletter on an ongoing basis, to seeing messages that they don't open in their email than they are to LinkedIn at this point. That's my take.
Yes. All righty. Well, we're getting more questions in, and thank you for your commentary in the chat. I keep teasing this topic, and this is something I kind of shoehorned into this presentation because you and I have had conversations about what I call disintermediation. And I want to spend a little time on that, and we'll come back to the marketing piece, but I think they're interrelated. So let's talk about disintermediation. I've said that word so many times in this presentation. I'm curious if people understand what disintermediation is. So let's start with just defining what is disintermediation. I can, or you can. Would you like to go first, or would you like me to?
Take a swing. Go for it.
Okay. So to me, most of the folks on this call are intermediaries. It's a fancy word for business broker. It could be a Main Street, could be an M&A broker, but intermediary, we're literally in between buyer and seller. We're that buffer to help get the deal done. And as a function of that, we are connecting buyers and sellers to intermediate. Now, there are some forces in the business brokerage world. In the real estate world, it seems to be like Zillow, which are trying to, or seem to be disintermediating and creating this shortcut between the buyer and the seller so that no intermediary is needed. So when I look at the landscape out there, there is a couple or maybe a key player who seems to be sucking up all of the marketplace and where a lot of the leads are coming from for business brokers, especially for buyers. So, and interestingly, our polls didn't reflect too much where your buyers are coming from. But I would contend that the majority of business brokers, buyers are coming from one single business sale platform. Now, I want to set up this conversation to point out the fact that Adam Ray, you have a platform. BizNexus is a platform for buyers and sellers, and this is by no means a commercial for your platform as an alternative to the dominant one in the marketplace. but nonetheless, I think it's a fruitful conversation that we can explore a little bit about what disintermediation is, how it could be an issue for brokers, and kind of how our marketing ties into that. So let's start with disintermediation. Are we kind of on the same page of what disintermediation is? Do you agree with how I've laid it out?
Yeah, I do. I see it from different angles. I mean, you're talking about, I think, the larger platform in the market as being the disintermediator, which I understand that. I'm not going to comment on specific companies, but then I also see what you see in every industry where you have startups that have the idea of disintermediating an intermediary, right? And what happens with those. And I'm waging war on both fronts with what I've got. So I'm dealing with that on a regular basis. It's something that affects every industry. It's just the world that we're in. I think at the end of the day, brokers have to do their best job at adopting new technologies that will ideally lead to growth of the industry, increase productivity in the industry, and not the opposite. I turned down venture at one point because I do, and this is not a pitch. If you go to my platform, it is based on the intermediary. In M&A, in business acquisition sale, I think anybody who's trying to disintermediate the intermediary is doomed to failure. I think a good intermediary is irreplaceable in the transaction process, not only because business owners just don't know what the hell this industry is about. That's the way the industry is set up, but they just don't have the bandwidth to do it. Anybody who's running a business cannot effectively manage a transaction. And I think the other piece that brokers really need to engage with, especially in this environment, is just becoming expert marketers, right? I mean, there's the transaction piece, but then can you guarantee to your seller that you're going to get their deal in front of the best eyeballs in a coordinated fashion? And proving that you can do that is going to be a real key to success going forward. And I think that's going to, I think ultimately general platforms, like what we do with our platform is we focus on matching. So ideally we're showing you what you want to see. General platforms that will just try to arbitrarily connect sellers and buyers for a fee, I don't see that working out at scale.
Yeah, we're brokers, but we have to be marketers. I mean, that's where the leads come from. That's where the beginning of our presentation came in. And I found that interesting what you said, that you owning a platform, running a platform, are getting offers to be rolled up into bigger platforms. And that it sounds like you made the decision that wasn't appropriate for a number of reasons. But you see the value of the broker in the deal, and the need for buyers and sellers to have help like intermediaries to push to get those deals done. That's kind of what I heard. Maybe I'm a little biased as an intermediary, and I respect that you've done that. But let's talk a little bit more about just what that looks like. I mean, if all of the buyer leads tend to come from fewer sources, how can brokers change that? If brokers feel dependent on one source to get their buyer leads, if that's just what's working, how can they break away and find different buyers? If the platform is growing, if the technology is getting stronger, if we do a Google search and the top 3 results are a business listing platform, and we can't get our website above that because of the scale, what are some ways that brokers can compete to maintain their buyers, to maintain their sellers?
Yeah, so this could be a much larger conversation, but there are different types of buyers, right? So you're talking about a generalist, like maybe first time or one-off Main Street buyer, where you have this platform that's been around for X amount of years. They have the SEO, and so they're going to have that flywheel going, right? They're going to be platforms like mine that will chip away here, chip away there. We'll get awareness, but you want to play the trends. And again, to go back to the strategic trend to private equity, I think this industry, strategics are only becoming more active. So with one-off buyers, look, if you're a regional broker and you have a set geographic territory, you can target if you're a generalist, you can target people who are executives who've been in their career for a certain amount of time, who fit the bill. If there's a big company and they've had layoffs, you can definitely do that targeting and put them into a drip, and you can get these people into your network and expose them to your ongoing marketing, to your ongoing branding. I mean, there's that strategy, but to go dump a bunch of money into SEO with a digital marketing agency thinking that you're going to get the top results, that's not an effective strategy if you have a limited budget. You have companies like LinkedIn, right? If I Google Neil Isaacs right now, right, your LinkedIn profile is going to be right at the top. Why is that? Because they've gone open kimono with Google. Google crawls LinkedIn. So make sure that you have all these keywords on your LinkedIn profile. That's going to be more valuable than any dollar that you spend on your SEO for your own website if you haven't been doing that for a while. You want to make sure you take care of that low-hanging fruit first. But setting yourself up as best you can as a broker to just have that marketing in place, to have that funnel set up so that you have the flywheel of your primary prospects getting pulled in, but the referral prospects bringing people in. And that's how you're going to build that out over time. Engaging with platforms like BizNexus, with these other platforms, yes, that's important. Make sure that they are platforms that fundamentally value the value proposition of the intermediary, because there are ones out there that clearly, have a different agenda. But outside of engaging with these other platforms, making sure that you're, helping to create a healthy ecosystem of competition, take care of yourself. Make sure that you're getting good at digital marketing, that you're filling up your Rolodex full of your primary prospects, your referral prospects, and you have an effective ongoing marketing campaign in place to do that.
So this ties in back to our previous conversation about CRMs, about contacts. So one of my questions is, how are brokers affected by disintermediation? The answer is, it's not good for brokers. It's not good to the point I made before, where all of our leads are coming from the big platforms. But to your point, collecting this data, building our own database so that we can go back and market for sale businesses to contacts that we own. It's who owns the data, right? If we're dependent on these platforms, we're suffering. If we have our own engine and we can broadcast out from our marketing house, then we're stronger. Is that a way to look at it?
It's a way. It's not the exact message I'm trying to convey, obviously, because I'm running one of these platforms. I'm not saying go run away from BizNexus and get everyone hoard your data. The best thing that would happen to any incumbent would be to see all of these brokers go off in their separate silos and try to hold their own little data and create their own little. That's right. You need to band together behind platforms, quite frankly, like in my opinion, like mine, that do have the business broker as the foundation of the platform. We're all about better connecting sellers and buyers to the intermediary for a reason. Identify as many platforms like that as you can, engage with them. Identify as many channels that are hot, that are active, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's a TikTok that just flamed out. I don't support TikTok for business brokerage, but these channels, these platforms are going to be hot or not on an ongoing basis. It's the process that you have in place that matters over time, making sure that you're leveraging these channels as they get the traction. Because if you get a buyer on a channel and you get them into your own ecosystem, it doesn't matter what happens with that channel a year from now. You've got that buyer and they're exposed to your own nurturing campaign. So making sure that you do have your feet in these platforms, you do have a presence in these channels. It's critical as part of the process, regardless of what channel is hot any given year. In my opinion.
And that's kind of what thank you for re-articulating what I was trying to say. I don't think we can't own all of the data ourselves, but I see a successful marketplace to just be more balanced, to have just that one seems too big. And then maybe success is to have our great profile on all the functional sites, the listing sites like yours and the others, so that we're there wherever buyers are looking. And that there's a diversity of places where people go to search for businesses, that they don't just go to one, that they have other functions that recognize the importance of the intermediary. Maybe that's what success could look like.
Yeah. I think in this industry, again, you're never going to disintermediate the intermediary effectively. It doesn't. Every deal is so sticky, especially once you get to the last 10 yards. I mean, something always pops up.
Yeah, but I don't know that buyers and sellers know that. And I think maybe there's an education piece for just talking about the value that intermediaries bring, that you can't do a business deal online Maybe you can do a mortgage online, but business deals are more complicated, and that's where intermediaries should bring value.
Yeah. I mean, we're doing our best to get that message out. That's what we believe in. That's why we're trying to connect the traffic to the intermediaries. There's no deal where a business owner can just post it and get a deal done if it's a transaction that is looking to maximize value and efficiency. It's just, it doesn't happen. I've been in the industry too long. Well,
this topic of disintermediation, we don't have to spend a lot of time on it. It's kind of a hot topic. If you have questions or comments about it, you'd like to you can put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. But let's go back to marketing again. Got another question in the Q&A about LinkedIn. How often should you post? You got an audience and you want to nurture it. What are your recommendations on posting on LinkedIn, frequency, and so forth?
Just don't turn away your constituents. Right? If you're posting and you're getting a lot of engagement, maybe you can amp up the velocity and wind up posting every day. In general, 2-3 times a week is what we recommend, but find your rhythm. Again, it's more about what you're posting, how you're posting, the process for doing that. Does the content that you're sharing help define you as the qualified authority in your space? And is that getting in front of, is the goal to get that in front of as many qualified eyeballs as possible? Are you just posting to a random social network? Who cares, right? If you're posting to a very targeted audience of your business owners and referral prospects in a LinkedIn network, for example, that's where you really start to get the reinforcement marketing. That's where you start to get the value. So get the process in place first, then worry about quantity of posts.
Got it. Quality over content. Wonderful. All righty. Well, we're starting to wrap things up. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and get your plugs in, Adam Ray. I put your being digital, social selling. You mentioned that you do webinars. I put that in the chat. If people want to learn more about you and your contributions to our industry, where are some good places that they could go?
I could give you a list. Just sign up for BizNexus if you're not already on it. You fill out your profile. We're going to match you with buyers. We're going to match you with sellers, and you'll get information about the agency. And we're out there trying to promote the business broker, the intermediary, as best we can. The more you engage with us, the more we're able to do that. So hopefully we can just bring the industry on board.
So for those of you watching, if you haven't been to BizNexus.com, this is a listing site, and it's a matching site where you can fill out a profile as an intermediary, as a buyer, a seller. I encourage you to do that. And as I mentioned, Adam won't plug it, but I will. Adam does run BN Digital, which is a marketing agency, and that specializes on helping intermediaries. And they do more stuff than I realized. They do mailing, actual direct mail type stuff. They have a diversity of different marketing products. So I encourage you to check that out as well. Adam, did you want to say any closing comments just about takeaways from today? It could be about disintermediation, could be about responding to this COVID environment that we're now living in. Any closing comments on your part?
I mean, other than thanks for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak and talk shop about the industry. It's fun to recap what's happened over the past 6 months. It's crazy that it's been 6 months. And when you think about that in terms of what happens over the next 6 months, I think the importance that you want to place on your marketing stack is just watch what's working. Set up your funnel so that it's optimized to be automated at the top of the funnel, and you get these break bread conversations closer to the bottom of the funnel, because that's going to continue, that's going to accelerate. And in my mind, the business brokers who are able to more quickly adopt that and to make that an efficient process are going to just zip ahead of the pack, because this is an industry where the large majority of business brokers are really behind.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you for being here today. Let me see if I can't pull up my screen. Here we are. Here's our last slides today. So that was Adam Ray. Thank you for joining us. Discussion on deal origination, a post-COVID world, with some talk about disintermediation as well. just a final thank you to our sponsors today that you see on your screen: Wells Fargo, Pinnacle, Diamond, Synovus, Virginia Community Capital, Aquesta Bank. We typically will do an open forum, but with the new Zoom setup, I'm not sure how well that can work out. Let's pause in the open forum today. I'll leave it that we've got more programming that we're working on, so check your emails. I mentioned we're working on our website, but we're not currently don't have these events listed on our website. So check your emails, check your junk emails too. Some of mine do go to junk. And we've got some more events coming up soon. I think that's everything that I wanted to cover today. Adam, I want to thank you for joining us. For all the attendees out there, thank you also for joining us. This is Neil Isaacs for Adam Ray, thanking you for being a part of our presentation today. We will see you again soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for your time, Neil. Thanks, everybody.